Hey guys, I'm Dan Keynes from Paralinx, and today we're here at AbelCine in beautiful downtown Burbank at the UAV seminar. And we just did a little quick preview and seminar about aerial cinematography using the Paralinx Arrow-X wireless HD transmitter aboard an octocopter. Tony, the pilot, just took the octocopter up about 150 feet and brought it back down safely for a crowd of about 200 people, all the while enjoying a beautiful HD picture thanks to the Arrow-X. Thanks so much for checking out our little demonstration at the AbelCine Aerial Cinematography Workshop, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
All right, I want to introduce you guys over here to Mr. Dan Keynes. Is it pronounced Keynes? Proper?
Keynes.
From Paralinx. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used this product over here, as I mentioned, and he'll give you a little bit of information on it, or as much information as you guys want. He's also set up over there as one of the vendors, and as I mentioned, we've got the live downlink from that GH4 that we'll be flying later today, showing to a station. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Dan Keynes.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you so much to AbelCine and to everyone else who's presenting and everyone who's in attendance today. I think it's a really exciting and wonderful time that we live in, and I'd like to talk to you today about two things. One is safety, and the other thing is high definition FPV, which means first person view. So I myself am a cinematographer, and I'm an enthusiast for multi-rotors and all aerial vehicles. So two things come to mind when I'm thinking about safety and about HD FPV. And the first quote that I can think of is actually from Spider-Man's uncle, who I think was quoting Voltaire when he said, "With great power comes great responsibility." And that's absolutely true. With these great enabling technologies, we really have to think very carefully, just as Lucien was saying and as Robert was saying earlier, about how we treat them, because not only is our own safety at risk, but the safety of others. And if we're able to use these tools responsibly, I think we'll be able to find that we'll be able to use them without as much restriction for as long as we aim to in the future. The other quote I have is from Carl Walter Lindenlob, ASC, who recently said, "You have to learn to see." And, you know, when I first heard him say that, it made me kind of chuckle. But, you know, he's not talking about literally seeing with your eyes, but seeing with your mind and having situational awareness, whether you're making a film on the ground or whether you're making a film in the air. If you ask any pilot about what the most important aspect of safety for an aerial vehicle is, I'm pretty sure they would tell you it's situational awareness. So one of the great things about HD FPV, or first-person view, is that it actually enhances your situational awareness when you're flying a craft. And by that I mean you'll be able to see not only where you're pointing your camera, what heading and direction and speed you're going with your craft, but who might be at risk if your copter is flying. So having that first-person view is something that it sounds like the FAA is currently trying to regulate, and I think that's something that we all have to be concerned about, primarily because having an FPV, or first-person view, actually gives you greater situational awareness of a craft. So I would urge all of you in attendance here today to take a look at the memo that recently was published by the FAA suggesting that FPV is banned. My belief that that's actually not the best way forward, and that we should actually be encouraging people to use FPV, but using it in a responsible way. So as an additional point of reference, not only from having a direct line of sight, having a spotter, but also having situational first-person view from the craft and from the gimbal that you're operating the camera from. And that is where my product comes into play. So Paralinx is a wireless HD video transmitter, and what that will allow you to do is have a full HD first-person view from a remote camera, whether that camera is on a quadcopter, an octocopter, on a Steadicam, on a handheld gimbal like a DJI Ronin or a Movi. It just gives you remote HD viewing. So that's really beneficial because it'll allow you to see not only what you're framing, which is one of the most important things when you're filming, but also to have better situational awareness of your craft. And the key points about the Paralinx technology are that it's full HD, so you get a crystal clear image. You get the most situational awareness you can have of any HD video transmitter. It's zero delay, so that gives you greater situational control. As you become aware of what you're framing or what's around your periphery of your craft, you'll be able to react faster in real time. So there's zero delay between what the camera sees and what you see at your receiver or ground station. And finally, it's uncompressed. So if you are flying in a risky situation, say over the ocean and there's a shark jumping out of the water at your craft, you can actually record the signal that's being fed to your receiver and use that as a master should you choose to. And then if the shark eats your octocopter, you're still good to go. So with that being said, I would just urge all of you to look into the FAA memo that was published restricting FPV. Think about how having a high-definition first-person view from your craft could greater enhance your piloting skills, greater enhance your ability to frame shots as a remote camera operator, and increase your situational awareness. And you know, I mainly came up here not to talk about my product, but mainly to talk about how having a first-person view in HD can help better benefit your safety and your awareness of the exciting new craft that we're all exploring right now. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions from the audience. Yes, sir.
What's the difference between the HD signal and the distance compared to other previous receivers? Like what I've heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, is that the HD signal can inherently be less in terms of distance and how much it can send.
That's an excellent question. So what he's asking is, having HD, will that give you less range? Generally speaking, the answer is yes. We're sending a full HD signal, so it's a higher bandwidth, and there's a lot more information that needs to be packed and sent wirelessly. So inherently, you're not going to have as long of a range as you would using an analog transmitter. But the benefits outweigh the drawbacks as I see it. Do you really want to be flying a craft with an expensive camera 2 miles away? Maybe. It's definitely outside your line of sight. So I think it's a great question. Our longest range system will go anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 feet, and that's called the Tomahawk. And my personal belief is that, at least for my personal use as a cameraman, I don't ever really need to go over 6,000 feet away, although it's very exciting to go farther and always push the boundaries of what we can do. Definitely an HD system will have a lower range.
Question.
Yes, next question.
How about line of sight? How far will it go, especially if you go trees, buildings, things like that, as you pan around them? Will you lose that signal, or how does that work?
That's a wonderful question as well. So our system uses the 5.1 to 5.8 gigahertz portion of the spectrum, and that has not as good a penetration as lower frequencies like 2.4 gigahertz or 900 megahertz, but again, the benefits, I believe, will outweigh the drawbacks, and we've gotten great results going around trees, working in highly dense forest areas, in warehouses with metal beams, things like that. Personally, I wouldn't recommend turning a corner around a building in a city street without having a spotter. And one of the other great things about our system is that you can have multiple receivers. So your spotter could actually have his own receiver and have a contact system so that he could radio to you, okay, you're making the left turn around the building. We still have a clear picture. Come walk closer and we'll switch the relay so that you can see and so that you can still control. But my personal recommendation would not be to be flying around corners of buildings unless you have a spotter anyway. So, but we've gotten really good results as long as you're still within that 2,000 foot range with the Tomahawk.
Thanks. What's the price range?
We have several systems. Our entry-level system starts at $1,095, and that's called the Arrow. We have a mid-range system called the Arrow-X, and the Arrow-X.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I'll be happy to go into that. So the low-end system is HDMI only. We have an HD SDI bracket for it. It has a range of 300 to 330 feet, depending on your environment, and that's the entry-level system. And that starts at $1,095, and they carry it here at Able. Our mid-level system will go anywhere from 600 to 1,000 feet, and that's called Arrow-X. Able also carries it. And our high-end system has a range of anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 feet, and that's called the Tomahawk.
What's the cost on these things?
The Tomahawk is $6,999 for transmitter and receiver together. The Arrow-X is $3,999, and the Arrow Plus, which is our shorter range system, starts at $1,095. Is there any other questions I can answer for you guys about HD or FPV?
Yeah, can you compare the clip, the clip versus your unit? What the difference is?
Sure. One of the things we pride ourselves on at Paralinx is that our systems are virtually plug and play. So by that, you apply power to the transmitter, you apply power to the receiver, you connect your transmitter to your camera, you connect your receiver to a monitor or HD goggles like the Zeiss Cinemizer, and you should have a picture. With some of the competitor products, you have to go through some IP configuration, some networking. You have much higher latency on those products. One of the benefits of those competing products is that you can connect it to a tablet or a smartphone. Certainly that can have an advantage, but then if you're doing that, there's not really a mounting bracket on those things. You could put a suction cup or something to use that monitor, but if you're using a production-ready monitor or a television with a VESA mount, it's very easy to attach it at a level. That's another thing about safety that I would bring up is a lot of people I see with monitors attached to their remote transmitters, and if you're looking at the picture, you're going to have to look down. But if you're trying to have an eye line to your craft, it's really ergonomically poor for your neck to be looking down, for one thing. But safety-wise, every second that you take looking up and down takes your eyes away from the situational awareness of the craft. And so that brings me back about learning to see everything that's around you and be aware of it. So again, with those competitor products, you're going to have delay. You're going to have configuration questions or issues. I've tried using them myself. That's really why I started the company, because I was so frustrated with other things that weren't really up to my standards. And the other thing is our support is bar none. We're right here in the Los Angeles area in Glendale. And if you have any questions or concerns, not only about your system, but about UAVs, about cameras, our support team is super friendly, super knowledgeable, and we're always there for you.
What's the lag?
We have less than 1 millisecond. So when we do the demonstration a little later, you'll be able to see that you can snap your fingers and what you see on the monitor happens in real time. And if you have someone talking, lip sync is accurate.
So how many frames is that? About 4? Something like that?
Much less. It's a subframe. It's a field, as this gentleman said. Yes.
How much energy is used by the during full broadcast band? What's the energy consumption?
Power consumption. The transmitter consumes most of the transmitters consume 1 amp at 12 volts, and as far as power output, all of our systems are under 25 milliwatts output to comply with European regulations and US FCC regulations. Sure.
I just had a question about first-person view, the goggles. I mean, specifically Fat Sharks and the new ones that are coming out, the ones that have like an HDMI port. I'm just curious, in order to stay, up to date with your technology, would you recommend somebody who would be able to plug in HDMI or any first-person view goggles of any of the manufacturers? Are there ones specifically that you like that work best with your system or without?
Yeah, I haven't tried the new Fat Sharks lately personally, but having that HDMI port will ensure that you're able to at least physically connect with them. right now we resell the Zeiss Cinemizer OLED goggles because I find those to be of the highest image quality that's available right now. But to be completely honest with you, I think that there's new technologies on the horizon that are going to blow away everything that's been done so far. So the Fat Sharks, I don't think they're even as high resolution as the Cinemizer. I think even though they have an HD input, they're still standard def goggles. The Zeiss goggles are approaching full HD when you factor in the pixel fill factor of both displays. So those are full HD when you count both displays. And I think there's some stuff coming that's just going to blow all of our minds with this new technology called retinal projection, where they literally are projecting right into our retinas. Sounds scary. Sounds really scary, but I think it's going to be cool. I mean, I'm going to try it with only one eye at first and see how it goes. I'll use my left eye because I need the right one for operating the camera. So.
The NSA.
What was the name of the Zeiss goggles you prefer?
Zeiss Cinemizer. And we have a set here if anyone wants to try them out. I brought them with us. Yes, sir.
You were saying that your system uses the 5 gigahertz spectrum, and that there were advantages to that over, say, a 2 gigahertz spectrum. I can't say that I've ever personally seen a 2 gigahertz one, but what would those benefits be? I know it's a shorter range, but...
That's a great question. Thank you for asking, because one of the other things that we have to consider when we're flying these craft is that most of the radio links that we use for control are based on a 2.4 gigahertz portion of the spectrum, the same as traditional Wi-Fi. And that 2.4 gigahertz portion of the spectrum is very congested because almost every home has a Wi-Fi router. Many people have 2.4 gigahertz cordless phones. If anyone's still using home phone lines, I'm not sure. And yeah, of course, control. So if you're using a video transmitter that's using a very wideband portion of the spectrum on the same frequency band as your control channel, the chances of running into interference that will either cause your video signal to break up or, God forbid, your control signal to break up, that's one of the great things about diversifying the bands that you're using your systems on. So having our system in the 5 gigahertz portion of the spectrum allows us to be differentiated from where your control might be. Of course, there's exceptions to that because there are some 5.8 gigahertz control solutions out there, and there are some 2.4 gigahertz video solutions, but it's hard to get enough bandwidth to have a really good HD signal in 2.4. I know all of the systems that are out there, and I'm not a brand agnostic person, so if you want to talk about other brands after the presentation up here, I'd love to go through all of them with you guys, and I'm actually really excited about the one from DJI, but I don't think it replaces what we do at all. I think the DJI Lightbridge is really cool because it has more situational awareness tools built in. So to me, if you use both of those, you'll have a situational awareness for the pilot. You'll have a compass, airspeed and heading information, as well as battery level through the on-screen display. That's really useful piloting information. And if you're using a Paralinx system for your gimbal, you'll have the best choice for a camera operator so that they'll be able to track something and match a shot or have a really smooth tracking. Say you're trying to follow a motorcycle, a car, or a person on the ground. You really need that zero delay in order to be able to do that accurately. Anyone else?
We have time for one more.
Yes, sir.
The quarter watt limitation of the transmitter that you mentioned, is that effective radiated power from the antenna, or is that from the amplifier itself that's being mandated by the FCC?
That's another wonderful question. So there's two parts to that question. One is the range restricted by the amplification power of the system as mandated by the FCC? Or is that a physical limitation of the system? And actually, it's both. So on our Tomahawk product, which is our longest range product, using the default antennas, you're pretty much capped at between 2,000 and 6,000 feet. If you either wanted to add amplifiers or get permits from the FCC to run at a higher output power, you may be able to achieve greater ranges. On our Arrow-X product, we're actually doing something different with the modulation, and that's the way that the signal is multiplexed and multipathed and sent over the air. And your basically physics limits the range to between 600 and 1,000 feet. So you won't really be able to go over 1,000 feet with that system. And with the Arrow product, you have inbuilt antennas, so there's no opportunity to put external antennas to that. So you're pretty much capped at 330 feet with that one. Does that answer it? Okay, thank you so much.
Last question out front. Let me get the mic over.
Can you bridge multiple units to, like if you're working in an area that has multiple buildings, you want to be able to fly around and not lose the bird, lose transmission? Can you bridge that?
You can certainly do a bridge system where you'd have one link that's at the farthest range. Typically for something like that, like let's say we were doing a film about motorcycles and it's a motorcycle course. My recommendation would be to put the receiver in the center of the course and have an antenna tracker, which is something that we can talk about, where you're actually using a transponder that uses a little gimbal motor to follow your craft in the air. So the directional panel antenna will always follow the direction of your craft. And that will keep a good lock on the signal no matter whether you're going 2,000 feet that way or 6,000 feet that way or 6,000 feet that way. And so to have that antenna tracker would be most beneficial and probably the best way to do that. You could also just use a powerful omnidirectional antenna, but the directional antenna will have better reception almost always.
All right, guys, thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Over here.
Have a great rest of your day.
I definitely welcome you guys again over in the showroom over there to come see him, ask him more questions.